This is Coda Radio, episode 289 for December 18th, 2017. Hi everyone, and welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and its related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us, like a warrior in a used car parking lot, it's our host, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hello, Mike!
Hello, used car, but really new, because I buy new cars. I don't buy used cars.
I didn't mean to characterize you as a used car buyer, although the value generally is a higher return on the used car, as you know when you drive them. Oh, well, you've heard this before. Oh, interesting.
I have heard this. I keep my cars, though, for at least 7 years.
Oh, really? You know, I'm going that direction with my last couple of vehicles. I went through a younger period of my life where I was really commuting a lot, and I felt like the problem to my commute not being great was my car, and so the solution obviously was to just buy more cars. Turned out not the solution, Mr. Dominic.
No, I hate buying cars, because the second you take it off the lot, it's there's 20% of your value right there in the toilet.
But you did get a new car today, right? Is it like as we're recording? Is it today or?
I did. I actually picked it up earlier today. It was it is not a Tesla. My name is not Marco.
You didn't get the new semi, huh?
Yeah, no, it's a 2018 Chevy Malibu.
Nice.
Very, modest, regular car.
Good commuter car.
I like cars, but the idea of paying more than like 20 grand for a car burns me.
Yeah. Boy, try buying an RV. Ooh.
Yeah, well, those prices. I briefly looked into that, and those prices are just too much.
You know, there is much to get into today. I'm kind of surprised, actually. But before we get into like the actual like Coda Radio part of the show, is there like anything in the car that's like really kind of new and exciting? You know, because even like older cars, if you haven't had a car for a while, like I remember the first time I got a vehicle that had Bluetooth built in. Boom, game changer for me. Yeah. You know.
So again, this is a 2018, right?
Okay.
It comes complete with a touchscreen in the car.
Oh, how is that touchscreen?
It doesn't seem dangerous at all.
No.
And Wi-Fi, which again, it doesn't seem dangerous at all.
What? Like you get you can get like a cellular service for the thing, or what? Like
$20 unlimited.
Hooey.
My assumption is like if you want your kid to like watch Netflix while you drive,
right? Yeah, or passenger. Yeah.
But the thing that actually made me want to get a new car was mostly I was up north a few weeks ago, and I got a rental. And the rental had the old Apple CarPlay.
Oh, really? I've never tried CarPlay.
I had never tried it either. I didn't think I would care for it. It turns out I actually really, really like it.
Really? Is it pretty responsive? Does it feel pretty mature?
I mean, if it was in any other platform other than a Chevy, it would feel like crap.
Okay.
But just the normal experience, so you have to keep in mind too, my experience of using phones and cars up until this rental and now today was you plug in a auxiliary cable into the jack of your phone. Right.
Yep.
And in the land of dongles, you need a dongle to do that now. So like you can't really control it. You can't change like skip parts of a podcast or quickly change. It's just a hassle.
Yeah, I mean,
you end up looking.
You got to go for your phone, right? In fact, this was one of the compelling use cases for me with the watch. Is short version, the Bluetooth died in my vehicle. It's funny enough. So I ended up going back to the aux-in jack, and so I have to dig around for my phone all the time or use my watch. I ended up just getting a Bluetooth dongle and plugging it into my aux-in jack because I was so sick of the problem.
Yeah, see, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, like, so when I rented it, it was actually a Ford Fusion that I rented.
Oh, yeah, okay.
About a weeks ago. And the ability to, like, I'm driving in places I wasn't 100% familiar with, to just, like, say, hey, not Slipvana, you know what I want to say. You know what I want to say.
Yeah.
Hey,
hey, lady in the machine.
Hey, Apple lady, get me to blah blah blah. Hey Apple lady, change the song. Hey Apple lady, play so and so Linux action news on.
So voice commands, of course. I didn't even think about the fact that voice commands would work.
And it's like really deep into like looking at bots and AI and text interfaces and a little bit of voice. I'm like, this is where voice control makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Even though the touch interface is actually kind of crappy. It's not about the touch. It's about the voice control.
Now, I know in some cars, it's been explained to me that in some cars, when you activate the voice control, it'll actually turn down the fans a little bit. Have you experienced that? Like
I don't know. It turns down the music. I don't. Oh, okay. I literally just picked up the new car, and it was cold. And
so, in your short amount of time, have you gotten to try like Overcast playback, or because that's what I'd be all about is podcasts?
Yeah, Overcast. Yeah, it makes Overcast a much better podcast app compared to the others now.
Oh, okay.
Because I really do think that's kind of a killer feature. Spotify does work, but it's definitely another thing pushing you towards, hey, Apple Music's the better option if you're an Apple phone user. Because if you say, hey, Apple lady, she automatically will do Apple Music. Which is weird, right? Because as a developer, this proposes some interesting risk, but also some interesting opportunities. So like the opportunity would be, if I can have a useful app that might be useful to someone traveling, like a business traveler, and I can somehow get that interface to make sense in a voice controlled world. Well, implementing CarPlay is now a huge one up on top of my competition.
Yeah.
But if my app bumps heads with, Apple's existing like choices, you want to be able to be part of that Hey Lady Tubes thing, right? You don't want the default to be against you.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I would think is if you go to the time and trouble of, I'm sorry I forget what they are, but they're essentially like Siri intents that you can create as an application developer. That way, the user can invoke your application. So I have things, and I can use the things to-do list instead of the built-in phone one, which I find to be the things one to be more superior. I would imagine this is the same amount of work and the same kind of invoke commands that you would build for the phone or CarPlay. So say you went to all the trouble of doing this integration, even folks without CarPlay could probably still use these features.
The Hey Apple Lady stuff actually happens on your phone. So there's two ways to activate it. There's a button on the steering wheel that you can hit, and it'll do Hey Apple Lady. Or if you just say Hey Apple Lady, it does it.
Right, because that thing's really the phone's the brains of that whole operation there, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
I've had some limited experience looking at CarPlay, but it is definitely a dumb sort of terminal situation, right, where nothing is actually happening on the CarPlay device.
Now, does this make you interested in trying out Android Auto anymore?
So the GM vehicles actually do support both, right? So had I plugged in an Android phone that supported Android Auto, it would have just booted up Android Auto.
You got to be thinking that, though. You got to be wondering, if I could get my hands on a modern Android device, I should try this out.
Well, I have a Nexus 5X, which has it.
Okay.
So I might try it. Again, it's tough because I do actually carry an iPhone, right? I'm pretty locked into the iMessage lifestyle at this point. I bought so many sticker packs, Chris.
Yeah, right. iMessage is probably Apple's stickiest platform feature, I think, and it's particularly tricky when you move off of an iPhone and go to Android.
Because it breaks text messages.
Yes. So, it's a very sticky feature.
Aggressive lock-in feature.
Yeah, it's very aggressive. Well, congratulations, man. That's really cool. I know it's always like a hard decision when it comes time to buy a new vehicle, which one's right. Do you think you would take this thing all the way up to New York as a car trip, or was that still sort of like a flight or train?
That's actually my intention. So what I'm probably going to do, if I don't just drive it straight, there's something called the Auto Train. I'm sure.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that. I've actually told people here on the West Coast about that since you told me about that, and it blows their mind, Mike. It blows people's mind over here.
It ends up being fairly reasonable because like you get Wi-Fi on the train, and there's like a bar if you want to hang out, and you end up on the other side, north or south, right? And there's your car.
So can I ask you a clarifying detail about this thing? So you drive into the side of it? is that? I mean, how does your car get on the train? Do you personally drive it onto the train, or do you go park it somewhere, get out?
No, you park it. They have technicians or whatever you call them.
Okay, not as cool, but also still pretty cool and more realistic.
And the way they do it is actually it's Docker. They load it in containers and they load the containers onto the train. So it's not like they're dry. No, I see what you're. It's not like the old Spy Hunter game where like the truck opens at the back and you just drive it.
That'd be so awesome. And then you just casually, open, you park it, you get out of your car, you can walk around and go up to the bar. I mean, just to me would be amazing. I feel like that's how we do it here on the West Coast if we could.
It's a very like 1950s sort of experience.
It's funny,
and because it's not the airport, people are nice to you.
So you think you might load the car up into this and then take that halfway or most of the way up there, and then you'll be able to putz around in your own vehicle once you get to your destination, basically.
Yeah, so the auto train, I believe, gets out somewhere near D.C., so then I'd have to drive from there to New Jersey.
Do you go through all the hassle of doing like all the tax tracking and stuff for the gas and all that? I know you probably, I do. When I'm going, like say when I go to New York, I'm trying to keep track of the gas
expense.
If
it's a big enough trip, I will.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't track like every day.
But New York is so expensive. Just that whole area, even Jersey is pretty expensive. That whole area.
Well, I mean, it is like a 13 to 15 hour drive.
Ooh.
So you're talking probably, gas in the $200 or $300 range.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, for that I would track it. I mean, tolls are actually pretty expensive.
Yeah, and frequent. Well, congrats, and I'll be curious to hear if you have any more thoughts on the CarPlay or even Android Auto if you get a chance. I grabbed something that you submitted, and I said, let's just do this for feedback. Let's make this sort of like a special feedback segment. So you're seeking for people's opinions on different continuous integration strategies. And you write, I'm looking into upgrading my CI setup, and I'm having a hard time finding one solution that does the following: Rails, oops, there goes my fork. Rails, Xamarin, Node and JavaScript in general, really, and iOS native. And Mike is seeking out recommendations. There are a bunch of different hodgepodge solutions that you could put together. You could kind of construct like.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to end up looking at. But
yeah. So CoderRadio.reddit.com.
I really wanted like one. So here was the goal, right? One paid cloud solution that I knew, but iOS there's always set up because God forbid someone installs an app and didn't go through Apple with like certificates and P12 certificates. But I was really hoping to like have one solution that we could integrate with Slack and Bitbucket, that things would just do a pull request, merge, run a build, deploy a build.
Yeah, of course. That sounds wonderful.
for like, and really our major platforms are like, even iOS native is not that important anymore for me because we're really we're trying to be more enterprisey. So like iOS tends to mean Xamarin now, but like Rails is probably our number one. JavaScript is huge because of Alice and because of, in general, everything runs JavaScript, right? In some form.
Yep.
And yeah, and I will say that like, I see the way I separated this, and I think maybe that way I asked the question was stupid. It's not the Xamarin and iOS native are two separate problems. It's just iOS is a problem.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't matter what the tool chain is.
Yeah. You got a hard, sticky problem right there. Yeah. Whoa. Hi there. Jeez. Well, I have every now and then I have weird camera things happening here in the studio.
Oh. So there's like, there's a few solutions I found, right? We had a CodeShip years ago on the show, and they have a pretty good solution, but they come out and say straight up, we don't do iOS, which is fantastic. Circle CI does do iOS, but it's a separate plan from what they call their Linux plan, so you have to pay for it twice, which is not something I'm enthusiastic about doing. They have Microsoft has now their mobile app center or whatever they're calling it now, which actually looks awesome as long as you're doing like React, Xamarin, or iOS or Android, and it doesn't do Rails. Like that actually looked like it. I think it's mobile app. I'll find it, but I think it's mobile app center. That was probably the best platform I'd seen, other than just like setting up a Jenkins server, setting up a Mac Mini as like a build bot for Xcode, and having kind of what you're suggesting, kind of like a hodgepodge, roll your own solution.
Yeah. I'd like to see if the audience has any kind of solutions that they've tried out. They can go to coderradio.reddit.com or hit up Mike on the Twitters as well. That would also work. we have just a few days left until the holidays, and so Mike and I are recording at a kind of a different hour, at a different time. So the show's moving around a lot. So go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar if you want to join us live. Because if you look at the chat room right now, it's fairly dead right now because people don't know when the heck we're live. See? So what happens there? Boom. But we would love to have you join us. I had just a couple of other things in the Hoopla segment that I wanted to get to before we dive into more topics. And this one, I wondered if it came across your radar since you've been busy out there buying cars and whatnot. Microsoft, which is sort of relevant since we were just recently trying out Windows 10, Microsoft is releasing an official open SSH client and server for Windows 10. So you'll be able to invoke it just from the command prompt or whatever terminal you install. They're open sourced. It's all upstreamed. The project hasn't integrated it yet, but they're working with the OpenSSH Portable project. They're tracking the OpenSSH CVS bugs, CVS repository, and they're introducing like decent functionality on top of OpenSSH. Reintroduction of AutoConf support, PAM support. It has some certain things removed that they felt they couldn't ship, but they've built new stuff to replace it. And you'll be able to not only SSH into a Linux box from just the built-in SSH client, but you'll also, if you turn it on, be able to SSH into your Windows machine. And there's already an application in the Chocolate repository, like a chocolatey install file, that gives users a prompt when they connect to the Windows box over SSH. So when you SSH into your Windows 10 machine, there's a little prompt you can install. They'll say, would you like the command prompt? Would you like PowerShell? Or would you like Bash? For Bash from Ubuntu or Bash from SUSE? And you choose which one you want, and then you SSH into that. And Microsoft is open sourcing the whole thing. And if you have the Fall Creators Update already installed with like the beta option or whatever that mode is that's turned on, you can actually go into the Add Remove Windows features and install it right now. It's available right now to those people. I think it's kind of a big deal. I think it's kind of a huge deal. In fact, I don't know why, but to me it almost feels like a bigger deal than Microsoft shipping the Windows Linux subsystem for Windows, because it's not just them adding a competitive feature that lets them run Linux apps or have a shell, but it is actually they're working on they're working upstream on OpenSSH and integrating that into Windows 10. It's a true, real quality of life feature they're just adding. Not even like a we can do this competitive checkbox feature. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like this is a big deal.
Yeah, I feel like it's a pretty big deal too. And I'm thinking of young developers here who are like just getting out of college or midway through college that want to play games, but like because of like the way the ecosystem is right now, you need to use Unixy tools. I actually think, especially people in like the Mac and Linux development world, are underestimating kind of the long game here, like the 5 to 10 year play here for Windows 10. And, because I know lots of people who really would be perfectly happy doing their work on Windows. And there are tons of very technical people who do their work on Windows.
You might even say, the majority, perhaps.
Right, the vast majority, and people who like have to do things like Node.js, that's kind of a pain in the ass on Windows, or Ruby on Rails. Well, the more you add these types of solutions that mimic the, let's just say Unix, right, because it's Mac 2 kind of environment, the less that person has to change. And I'm not sure that that's a bad thing. I mean, is it necessary to inconvenience these people?
I mean, it's bad for Linux advocates, right? Everybody wants everybody to have a reason to switch to Linux, but
right, and it's bad for like super Mac fans, right, who like think that everybody should just use Mac and be happy. But I guess I don't see the virtue in like getting some 18-year-old or 19-year-old developer and telling, or student developer, and saying, all right, son, well, I know you like your Windows games, or son or gal, right? But toss that Surface out the window. Here's a MacBook, or here's a Lenovo Yoga Pad, or whatever they call it.
Yeah, I really honestly feel like what Microsoft is attempting to do slowly and very clever is to build the development platform that is for everything that's not iOS. If you're doing, I know I made that point, but I just, after seeing this, I really truly think this is what's playing out, and they're probably not done. This probably isn't the last thing they're going to do.
And you missed, or maybe you didn't miss another one of my tweets regarding, just the ever increasing usage of Microsoft services by me, and I have this feeling that I'm not alone.
Oh, I did see that. You tweeted that you are deploying a lot more Azure these days. A lot more.
A lot more Azure. A lot more just like Microsoft-y stuff, like C#.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean,
F functions, right? And Azure functions. And it's some of that is just economics, but some of that's also once you know how to do something, it becomes a lot more convenient to just work in that service.
Yeah, you get more and more, even if it's just the management side of it, understanding the language.
Azure, right? Just like, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I have like a DigitalOcean Azure sort of dichotomy, and like AWS is basically, I'm just not using it.
Right. Yeah, they're definitely not hurting AWS, but there is a widening product category that they don't really address. I think maybe a fair way to put it. It's like they're still doing tons of business. They're going to do better than ever, but it does feel like there is also a segment of the market that either AWS is too cost prohibitive, or the learning curve is too extreme, or
the cost is a big factor.
Yeah. Well, there's lots, or just there's other things that do it simpler.
Microsoft, like, if you haven't checked out Azure in a while, I urge you to take a look, because they're making things that were once hard pretty simple, and they have lots of like step-by-step tutorials and videos, and they're really saying we're the developer's friend. We can developers, right? We can get you from point A to point B. I'm not advocating that everybody should use it. I'm just saying that if I were like Amazon, or I were like a real hardcore Linux John the Baptist kind of guy, I would be looking not at the people around mine and Chris's ages, but at the folks who are like 19, 20, 21, and seeing, well, other than the ones who are like really into Linux for maybe social reasons or whatever, are you seeing a lot of like forced adoption? Because let's be honest, right? The Mac's upswing with developers, once the iOS SDK came out, it went way up because of forced adoption, right? And then you just get used to a platform and you work on it. But I honestly think this is going to definitely cut market share from Linux, or at least blunt the growth.
Perhaps, although the funny thing is if you're talking in terms of Azure, a larger and larger degree of the servers being deployed on Azure are Linux. And huge portions of Azure itself run Linux.
See, it's a different strategy, though, right? Microsoft isn't trying to sell Windows Server licenses. Mm-hmm. They're trying to they're trying to be like Super Telerik. I don't know if you're familiar with Telerik at all.
Mm-mm.
They're a big developers tools company, mostly focused on Microsoft developers. But their basic shtick is we build developer tools and proprietary developer libraries, especially UIs that are hard to do in things like WPF, and you can pay us for those. So like you can pay them like $50 and get a bunch of XAML templates.
Oh, okay.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but I know like large enterprises who have like $40,000-$50,000 annual Telerik contracts, because they just, if Telerik doesn't have a control for it, it's not a UI they can do.
Yeah, I've been in similar situations, so that I do follow you there. I think too, you have to, just sort of on that same vein, you have to consider there's so much momentum with the Windows platform on premises, and some of that is going to bleed into adoption of Azure or upgrading to Windows 10. Although funny enough, it still doesn't necessarily spell doom and gloom for Linux, because a lot of these on-premises infrastructures end up being Hyper-V installations running Linux. So it's very impressively, it seems like Microsoft has figured out how to make money at Linux winning.
Well, I think they've actually changed their entire model, right? They're not a Windows company. They're at least for this stuff. I know they have games and all kinds of other stuff, but they're focused on developer tools. And if that tool is Ubuntu, they are happy to charge you for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're super happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
2017, just sort of as sometimes happens when you're at the end of December, looking back at it, this was the year, really. I mean, they've been working this direction, but this is really the year where it felt like Microsoft isn't, at least for me, it finally clicked that Microsoft isn't pranking us. They're not playing some long con to destroy Linux. I don't know if they love Linux, but they certainly are taking a completely different approach to open source in Linux. And if it wasn't obvious this year, then you just can't see it. You're blind, because 2017 was the year that the Windows subsystem for Linux not only shipped, but We got like Ubuntu in the store where it was available to people that were not running special early adopter versions of Windows. Like it's available to the mainstream consumer running Windows 10 now. That's pretty incredible. Now we have this, and you're just looking at Azure, you can really see that they really don't care. If you want an Ubuntu solution, have at it, Haas. Here's a little button to deploy it. They don't even care which version of Ubuntu you want. You want to run something old and crappy? Go for it.
Doesn't matter. They have an Azure CLI that runs on Bash.
Wow. All right, well, let's take a moment here and let's talk about Linux Academy, because if you want to go learn Azure or OpenStack or AWS or your own local Linux installation, Linux Academy is a great resource for that. They have the best courseware in all of those categories, and it's built by people that really know and understand Linux, and educators and developers that came together to create the Linux Academy platform. Everything you need to learn and get hands-on experience in Linux. With self-paced, in-depth video courses, hands-on scenario-based labs that give you real experience, and humans that help you whenever you get stuck. Oh my goodness, it's a Linux Academy combo. You get 6 cloud servers or more that spin up on demand with the courseware, a scheduler that you can pick to work with your busy time frame because, I don't know, maybe it's the holidays. Maybe you got a lot going on. They got a way for you to continue to get value out of Linux Academy. Or just jump into like single-threaded topics, 10, 15, 20 minutes, little nuggets of wisdom. And they have certifications to show that you've completed your work. They have training if you want to go get industry certs, and learning paths that are specific content tracks that are really sort of focused on specific career tracks in the industry. Plus a bunch of study guides and audio for the lessons that you can download to and listen offline, iOS and Android apps, and they're adding new stuff all the time, constantly. And if you go out to any kind of community event too these days, you'll often see Linux Academy there. You can talk to them, ask them any questions, but even better, just get a 7-day free trial by going to linuxacademy.com/coders. That's linuxacademy.com/coders. Go see how the platform works. Go try out Azure stuff. And we talk about it more and more. Why not have more insight? linuxacademy.com/coders. And a big thank you to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. Coder Radio program. linuxacademy.com/coders. Okay, one more thing, Mike, before we get into a few other things. We got a lot to get to still. I don't know if you saw this week, but it really goes along something you and I have talked a lot about recently. And we finally have a LadyTube company that has a path to revenue for people that are creating these essentially bots or whatever you want to call it for the tubes. Amazon is introducing paid subscriptions for Echo Skills. Now, there are already a few in the market, and it's kind of interesting how they're stacking this thing. The first time, the first couple of skills that are doing this are like the really, really, really popular ones, which is, for example, the Double Jeopardy game. And they're doing a really interesting structure here. What it basically comes down to is, if you have Amazon Prime, you can get a couple of bennies in the game for free. You get maybe 6 extra questions a day in the Jeopardy game if you're an Amazon Prime member. And of course, a little skiff of that gets kicked back up to the developer. Or they will sell those options from the skill directly at $1.99 per month if you don't have Prime. And then of course that goes, most of that goes to the developer. And then you can add on more stuff, like more question packs and quizzes. And there's other games and besides the Jeopardy game that do this as well. So you can, even if you're already subscribed with Amazon Prime or you're already paying for the 6 questions a day, you can also then say, well, I'd also like to buy this one-off $3.99 pack of quizzes or facts or whatever it is. And then that gets associated to your Amazon account. All your Echoes get that functionality, and now you've just paid $4 to enhance a skill. So it's sort of like the in-app purchase model for skill functionality. What do you think?
I mean, I'm glad that there seems to be a way to monetize Alexa skills. I still don't think this is the ultimate way chatbots and voice-controlled bots, I mean, you can call them skills, but they're really bots, right? Yeah. Are going to be monetized. I sort of feel like it's going to be more of a Netflix-esque situation where you pay your subscription to, let's say, Botco. Botco gets you a bot, and that bot happens to be interfaceable on a number of platforms, inclling Alexa.
Oh, right? Boy, that is a developer's dream. Mm-hmm. I could see why you'd want that, because then...
Right, that is the world I want.
That's not going to happen,
I have all your... Right, I control the account. I have your email, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not how they're gonna let it work. No way.
You don't think so?
No way. This is how it's gonna be.
How would they stop me?
This is how,
unless they did an Apple and said your bot can't be here unless you use our payment system.
Yeah, and you use our back end infrastructure to run it or whatever it might be. You see, the thing is here is this is how they're going to do this. Apple's going to HomePod functionality will be an in-app purchase. It's probably going to be the same thing for the Play Store one day. This is this kind of stuff, like where the bot, essentially where the code of the bot executes, or the skill, or whatever you want to call it. There's no way they're going to let that run on a third-party service, because they want instant answers and they want to guarantee the delivery and integrate it in with the back end infrastructure.
Not how they work. That's not how bots work. Right, they don't execute on the device primarily.
No, right.
They execute.
Right. That's why they're going to want it on. That's why they're going to want it on their cloud, so they can guarantee a certain turnaround time.
That sounds like a nightmare. So let's just say
yes. Yeah.
I mean, let's take something like you have a to-do list chat. Let's call it Skill, because I think that's when they use like both Google and Amazon. I think Amazon. Well, no, Google calls it Actions, but whatever. And you want to be on both the Google Home and the Alexa. That would mean you would have like two radically different versions of this, but I mean, it really would be like mobile. It would be exactly like mobile.
That is exactly what I'm expecting. Yeah, isn't that awful? Just horrible.
And you're saying the monetization you think would have to go through the platform?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And then, so of course, you're going to have like one platform that's going to be a little bit better return wise, and one platform that doesn't return much. And so a lot of people won't even bother probably making skills for that platform. It's going to be the mobile ecosystem, just more locked down with less functionality.
I don't know. I have some faith. I mean, I think the way bots have been going. The one thing Apple did was they solved the real problem with monetization in 2008, right? That was just a pain in the ass as a developer to sell software.
Okay.
Especially on pre-existing mobile platforms like BlackBerry.
I hope you're right.
I hope I'm right too, because that would be really bad.
So really quick, before we move off of Apple, I saw you tweeting this week about the iMac Pro. The iMac Pro shipped. And I saw you looking at it not once, but
I bought a car. It was cheaper.
Yeah, right. But then I also saw a day later, you're like, the more I'm looking at that iMac Pro, the more I think I might actually be the Mac Pro devs have been waiting for, sans upgradability. It does seem to be, if you're getting into iOS development, or actually I shouldn't say that. If you're well into iOS development and you've got a budget, it does seem like a pretty decent machine performance-wise. Very expensive though. But I suppose for what you're getting with Xeon processors, lots of RAM, super fast SSD, 5K screen. It's probably
so
right.
Yeah. I think the iMac Pro is very pretty.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty good. Looks like it gives me hope for the Mac Pro.
But unless you're doing development-wise hardcore AR or VR, which VR development on the Mac sort of doesn't exist, right? It's kind of a Windowsy thing right now. I want to be careful here, Chris, because there's a non-zero chance I will at some point pick one up. So I don't want to give you something that you can hit me with.
You might even say a moderately high chance at some point.
Yeah, you might say, in 3 or 4 months. No developer needs this, right? Like the MacBook Pro on my desk is more than sufficient for I would say.
Yeah, if you're doing like a lot of builds, you're like trying something and it's broken, so I got to try fixing this build. Oh, it's still broken.
Yeah, I mean builds used to take like minutes, right? Now they take seconds.
Yeah, it's great.
If you are a video encoder though, and you're doing a bunch of 4K or 5K, if you're doing a bunch of AR and VR,
this thing's actually it's powerful, but this thing, it's funny. It's at the upper. It's not like a high range of what you need for that kind of workload. It's not in the low range either. Somewhere right there in the middle. It's in a very iMac-y position.
It seems to suffer from like being an iMac, right? And I mean that in not like a joke way, in that because you're an iMac, you have certain thermal things you need to think about, and a giant silver tower would have been a much more appropriate machine for AR and VR.
And it would seem too that the thinness remains a high priority even for the iMac Pro. So I'm assuming that's why they opted not to put a RAM door, even though the RAM is in slots.
Yeah, so it's a flawed machine, right? Like You're going to pay $5,000 and never be able to upgrade the RAM?
So you just, well, no, that means you're going to spend more than $5,000 because you have to, basically Apple forces you to just go all in. And if you want this to be a 5-year machine, you've really got to stack the thing. Yeah. Well.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't begrudge any of our listeners, because I know some of them are like trying to do AR and that kind of thing, picking this up. I think that in that case, it probably makes sense. And I know Chris is going to say blasphemy.
No. In fact, Final Cut
probably buy a Windows PC and do your AR work.
Yeah.
A lot cheaper.
Final Cut just did an update with full like VR shooting mode and editing mode, which sounds really interesting.
I mean, if you're just a Mac guy and that's what you're doing, that's fine. I mean, I will be honest, it certainly tempts me. If I didn't need a car, I might have thought about it, but I couldn't honestly claim that for the work I do, I would actually be using like really a third of its power, right? I don't even think I'd get there. I think it would be, because the thing that usually is my bottleneck, and if you're a developer and you're compiling a bunch of code, is actually like disk I/O, right? So especially if you will have a big project with lots of different files, right? Either, whatever, Java files, Objective-C files, whatever. It's, certainly your GPU was not your limiting factor. Your RAM probably wasn't, and your processor may be second, but it was almost certainly your disk I/O. And that's especially true if you didn't have a full high-end SSD. If you either have one of the older SSDs or the lower-end SSDs, or a Fusion drive, which 90% of the time, if you're compiling code on a Fusion drive, you're actually compiling it on the 7,200 RPM, or I think it's actually, is it 72 or 5,400?
I hope it's 72. Oh my God.
Let's assume it's 7,200 RPM spinning disk.
Yeah.
So again, if you're like sitting there with like a iMac from a few years ago, compiling big Xcode projects and wondering why things are slow, there are much simpler things you can do and much more affordable things you can buy than an iMac Pro. Having said that, it's dark or black, so that's better.
And it has very, very fast disks. 2.8 gigs read performance, 2.8 gigs a second.
The RAM is faster, right? It has better RAM than the equivalent Mac.
And 3.3 gig write performance, 3.3 gigs a second write performance. There are certain things that are very nice about this. I really appreciate the 4 USB-C, so Thunderbolt 3 ports on the back, but also keeping Ethernet, USB-A, SD card reader. Apple hasn't done that on some of their more recent machines. So it's really nice to see that you get the full-fledged USB-C Thunderbolt 3 stuff. And if I would bet, at least I would bet those are maybe on 2 separate controllers, those two, but I'm not sure.
One would hope.
And it seems like it's a pretty great package overall if you're willing to spend the money. So I think, it makes me really excited to see where they're going to go with the Mac Pro in the future.
Yeah, and there are different use cases, right? Like, I read a great blog post of a guy who's a data scientist, and a problem he had previously was it took too long to basically crunch all these numbers on his local machine. So he'd always have to throw a job off to, they had like a server farm, I guess, of whatever Linuxy servers that would, do their calculations, right? Well, the iMac Pro can just do that. It's just fast enough.
Yeah.
So that is good. But I don't think like the audience of this show, who tend to mostly be either like doing embedded development or mostly like web and mobile, I don't think anyone. Yeah. And like I said, if you want it, buy it, but you don't need it, right? It's not. Yeah.
Now, one other thing, just one note, and then we'll move off. Is this may sound the warning hyperbole alarms, boom, 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 lead to the end of Hackintoshes. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. But everybody we've speculated about it in the show. Everybody knows this thing ships with an A10 ARM iPhone processor, basically, and they call it the T2 chip. Their second generation, the first T1 was in the Touch Bar on the MacBook Pros.
Yeah,
and they say this integrates the hard drive controller, cooling, audio controller, all that stuff, and provides new security and OS OS detection if it's been tampered with or whatever. Which seems like basically killing the Hackintosh community, but I could be wrong.
We are seeing like the slow march of Apple slowly but surely deciding they want to make their own specification again, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we went PowerPC to Intel, and now I think we're going to somehow end up sliding away from Intel.
Well,
or moving
yeah.
into some dual mode. But I did want to, what did I want to say? If any of you listeners are actually running a Hackintosh and doing like serious like mobile development, I would love to know why. Because is the money you saved like worth the time of maintaining that?
You know, it depends. You know, I've done them a lot in the past, and
Okay.
one of the reasons I did it is simply because I could build a PC in a configuration that Apple just doesn't offer. You know, maybe I want 6 disks, and I want to be able to replace my GPU and put in PCI Express capture cards. Unless I want to buy a 2010 Mac Pro Tower, I can't do that.
That's my whole problem, right? All of these problems would simply have been solved had they not like shot the Mac Pro in the back of the head.
Yeah, that's what people in the industry have been saying for a long time. Yeah. So I'd like to know that too. Are people successfully running Hackintoshes? I have zero interest in doing it, but I haven't checked in on the scene for a very long time. So I'd be really curious to know what that scene looks like now. Can you run High Sierra? Because I bet you that's another problem, is even running. I bet High Sierra is a pain in the ass.
I would imagine like every update screws up your Hackintosh.
Yeah, I'd like to know how that's going these days. DigitalOcean.com. Go over to DigitalOcean and use our promo code CODERDIGITAL after you create your account, DigitalOcean.com. And the promo code is CODERDIGITAL. That gives you a $10 credit where you can spin up a machine on their infrastructure in less than 55 seconds. They call them droplets, and they rock. They're fast. Every single one of them, regardless of which price point you get in at, is SSD-based. SSD for days, guys. They got 40 gigabit connections coming to the hypervisors. They have Linux running the machines, KVM sitting on top of that, and then your choice. You can build a machine basically from the ground up. You choose the base distro, or you can deploy something that's an entire application stack ready to go. Want to try out GitHub? One-click deployment on DigitalOcean. And then they have block storage, which you can attach to your rig and give yourself more storage. Object storage, which is, they call it Spaces. Beautifully simple object storage. Nice and reliable and scalable, very easy to work with for all level of developers. They have team accounts if you're working in a group, monitoring and alerting where you can collect metrics, watch your performance, and load balancing as a service. We were just recently talking about continuous integration too. I'd like to point you over to their community section. So go to DigitalOcean.com, create an account, apply our code, CODERDIGITAL, and then go read this. They have setting up and using continuous integration on Ubuntu 16.04 with a whole bunch of different tools, like a whole roundup, like a comparison of the different options you might want to look at, from all the basic ones you've heard before from, and a couple of roll your own solutions. So it's pretty nice, and they have that out there. It's well written, it's well put together, and it's available to the community. DigitalOcean.com. Go there, spin up a machine, check out their beautiful dashboard, their straightforward pricing, and that simple API that has tons of apps already built around it for you to take advantage of. Or you could create one yourself. DigitalOcean.com, promo code CODERDIGITAL, and a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. And thanks to all you guys out there for using our promo code CODERDIGITAL at DigitalOcean.com. Really brief follow-up story. We were talking about the platform wars between Amazon and Google and Apple recently. Amazon relented. Amazon is going to start selling Apple TVs and Chromecasts in the very near future. So we may see this YouTube situation between the Echoes and Google resolve. Amazon said last Thursday it'll begin selling the Apple TV and Google Chromecast devices, two video streaming gadgets the e-commerce giant removed from its site 2 years ago when it launched its Fire TV products that competed with it. Amazon spokesperson said, "We can confirm we are assorting Apple TV and Chromecast right now." And the product pages are going back up online. The great platform war of 2017 may be coming to an end, Mike. And it just took a couple of days to resolve this time. Really, if you think about it. I mean, this has really been brewing for 2 years, I suppose. So I shouldn't say a couple of days. But once it really broke into the public discussion, it really only took about a week for them to kind of get their shit together. And I didn't think Amazon would relent, to be honest with you. They sort of had the power position here to a degree.
It is shocking that Lord Bezos, who, as you've informed me, is going to destroy my bot empire of dreams, is backing down. Business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess you got to get that juicy Amazon Prime app on that Apple TV, huh?
Yeah, boy. Oh, what a train wreck. Good for them, I suppose. You know, it's great to see the giants are getting along. Us civilians that were just caught in the crossfire here. I guess we can go about using your services and hardware that we've paid a ton of money and our own private information towards. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
This feels super okay.
Hey, I got a little treat as our pick this week. You know it's coming. I had to. This is so great. This came from Sandalot in our Coder Radio Discord server last week, and it's the Coder Radio Phenomenon song. I love it.
We're super small, right? We're 7 dudes. So everybody's doing like 3 jobs.
Sure.
And you get a phenomenon.
So great. So thank you to Sandalot for making that.
Yes, thank you, Sandalot. That was fabulous. Thank you.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, Mr. Dominic, is there any other topics of de jour that we need to touch on this week? I know you and I may be assembling later this week to record a holiday episode or two, because I think Coder Radio lands on Christmas and on New Year's.
On Christmas and New Year's, yeah. So we're gonna have to do that.
Yeah. So you and I will we'll get together again on Friday. Bring
Friday.
Yeah, bring your gin and tonic or whatever it might be, and join us then. And we'll have it live. So go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar for the live time for that. If you'd like to hang out with us on a Friday edition, and then that'll be our last 2 shows of the year. Of course, they'll go out in the RSS feed and post it at the regular time, but those will be the last live shows of the year, so we'd love to have you join us. Mr. Dominic, is there anywhere you want to send the good people throughout the week until we join again?
Just go to @DuManuco on Twitter and themadbotter.com.
Brilliant, sir. Well, congratulations again on the new car, and I'll look forward to seeing you on Friday. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into this week's episode of the program. And I'll look forward to seeing you on Friday, live, perhaps. Also, join our Discord, discord.me/JupiterColony. And they have a Coder Radio channel in there. We also have the Jupiter Dev channel, where folks are working on Jupiter Broadcasting related coding projects. So if you want to get involved in a side project, it's a good place to get started. Again, that's discord.me/JupiterColony. And then visit the subreddit. Mike's got his continuous integration feedback there, as well as a great spot to give feedback to the whole show, coderradio.reddit.com. And last but not least, you can hit me up on Twitter, @ChrisLAS, and the network is @JupiterSignal. Okay, everybody, thanks so much for tuning this week's episode of the Coder Radio program. And all things being equal, we'll see you right back here next week.